Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our series on CMMC. This is Mark Hateman, president of Curie Solutions, with our founder, Amira Armond. Today, we're going to talk to you a bit about the evidence that an assessor will want to see. So, Amira, with that, I pass it over to you, and let's talk about what kind of evidence.
Okay. Well, I'm going to share some information that I have trained somewhere between 300 and 400 assessment students over the years. So this is something that your CCPs and CCAs, a lot of them have been trained on by me or by, fellow Edwards instructors. So let me share my screen. And we're going to look at some security requirements for CMMC. So remember that CMMC level 1 has 15 requirements. Level 2 has 110 requirements. Level 3 adds more, right? And each requirement is this gray level here. Okay, so this is the second requirement. This is the third requirement, and they're all one sentence. They're from NIST special publication 80171. Okay. Now, when you're assessing, there's different types of evidence that you want to see. Okay. And they come in categories. So first off, is virtual evidence acceptable, or does it need to be something that you see with your eyes, with your physical on-site presence, right? That is pretty much the very first thing that assessors are going to try and decide during those early planning discussions of, do I need to come on site? Do we need to send people on site? Or can we just look at the evidence on a screen share, or can they just send us evidence via, like saved files, PDFs, right?
So there's the potential to even have screen-based document screen share, whatever evidence for physical controls. They don't necessarily require on-site. Is that true?
Maybe.
I thought that's what
And
you'd say.
and that's going to be up to the discretion of the lead assessor, who's highly trained in all of this and has a lot of experience.
Okay.
So if we're talking about physical evidence, right, the considerations for going on site are, one, is there stuff that would only be visible to a person walking through the building? And that would generally be triggered by, okay, you've got network equipment or server equipment in a facility. You've got physical controlled unclassified information that's physically stored in some form, like on an external thumb drive or paper or schematics that are posted to a wall or something, right? And in general, the lead assessors are going to lean very heavily towards, you got any of those? We need to come on site. The thing that makes an assessment a virtual assessment is typically, well, you're using a cloud as your information system, as your main information system. Think Office 365 or Google Workspace or AWS, right? And then the physical exposure is limited to just like laptops and maybe email on a cell phone, but you don't have external media with CUI on it. You don't have printed out CUI. You don't have servers on your facility, right? You don't even have a facility in scope. The in-scope facility is the data center for Microsoft, right? So that little quick conversation of, is it only laptops, or do you have servers and networking equipment and printers, or printed out CUI? That is about 95% of the decision point for whether we need to go on site.
So I just took you down a rabbit hole, didn't I? Sorry.
But it was a great conversation, right? Maybe we can talk. We can rename this to do assessors need to come on site, right? Now, assessors do have some ability to say, I don't need to go on site for a limited thing that would normally be a visual inspection. Because we do have tools. We have cameras. We've got cell phones that you can join a meeting on and kind of like look around with the cell phone. You can look back at the person and, and the assessor can actually do stuff like, okay, I want you to show your face right now. All right, now we know that this is not a fake recording, right? Okay, now turn it around, look down the hallway. I would like you to turn right, look at the top of the door, look at the bottom of the door, go into the door, scan left, scan right, look underneath the desk, right? And you can actually do a pretty good job with a physical inspection, assuming that the lead assessor is driving it, right? What you don't want is the client decides what they're going to show you, right? That's when we need to go on site if the client's not obeying those instructions and maybe they're trying to hide something. That's not good. Yeah. So there is a potential, especially if a company has failed one of the physical requirements or something that would normally be inspected visually, rather than getting on an airplane, coming back a week later to see if it's fixed. A lot of times we can just check it with something very simple like, pan your phone around and we're going to inspect it from all the angles if it's a very limited thing. Yeah. Okay, so next, and I'm sharing my screen. We have different types of evidence that we expect per assessment objective. So hopefully everybody knows that each requirement is split into one or more assessment objectives, which each need to be met in order for you to meet this overall requirement. So in this case, there's 6 different yes/no questions that need to be yes to meet this requirement here, right? For each assessment objective, A, B, C, D, E, the Defense Industrial Base Cybersecurity Assessment Center, DIACC, the DoD, they have given us a high-level idea of what evidence is expected. And this document has been provided to all the C3PIOs. In my opinion, any C3PO that you're working with on an assessment should send you this information pretty early in the planning process, so you can see what's expected, right? So a document is we're just looking for documentation. That could be your system security plan, a policy, a procedure. It's typically one of those 3. You might have a plan, right? It's a formal, nice document generally that we're expecting to see there. With a screen share, that's literally we're expecting to see it on a screen share, right? We want to see it live. We want to see it demonstrated. In some cases, a lead assessor might decide to accept screenshots of the same information, but that is completely up to the lead assessor. Generally, when you see screen share on this, the expectation is that we are seeing it live and, following the instructions of the lead assessor to verify it's not tampered with, right? It's not something that somebody set up to look pretty just for this assessment. Now, as we scroll down, we're going to see a type called artifact. Now, an artifact is generally another type of document or a file, but it's generally information saved into a paper form, right? Or virtual paper form. So an example could be a network diagram, a list of personnel, a list of equipment. It could be a print off of a knowledge base article or schematic that explains how things are done. So it's generally, we're not going to use a policy for an artifact. A policy would be in the document list. But if it's still kind of like a written out thing, like a list, but it's not a policy procedure plan, that's when we start looking at artifacts. And then we're going to get a little bit further. I'll find it someday. Hold on. So the third type, or the fourth type, is physical review. I think I'm going to have to go all the way down. Up here we go.
There we go.
So some assessment objectives. Remember, this is per assessment objective. The expectation is a physical review where you are verifying stuff with your eyes, right? Now, note that this is a configuration management practice, a CM domain requirement. It's not the physical domain. So there's a physical security domain that's got lots of stuff we need to go on site to see. And then throughout the other families, cybersecurity domains and CMMC, there's occasional assessment objectives that are expected to be physically reviewed. And it's typically done by, it's just easier to check them if you're on site. So stuff like, does your screen lock after 15 minutes of inactivity? It's kind of hard to check that with a virtual session because like you don't see anything. You could be sharing your screen and it just won't change, right? But if you're standing by the computer, you'll see the computer screen shut off. So this can be done virtually, right? It does need to be one of those situations where the assessment is decided to be a virtual assessment. And in that case, it's, there's some leeway on whether we're going to take a picture of it or a video, by somebody on site, or if the assessors want to just take interview attestations or, just talk to people to see what happens. Now, something that's very interesting here in this list is not a single one of them says interview. So talking to people is typically used as a confirmation of whatever other evidence was reviewed, and very rarely as the sole source.
So there's likely to be conversation, but it's really about confirming questions maybe related to the other evidence types.
Right.
Yeah.
You can see some sort of interview evidence being used for all of these. Hey, do you follow this policy you just sent me, right? Or the assessor might be looking at a procedure that was provided and then ask a human resources person what they do in that case, right? And if you're lucky, the human resources person pulls out the same copy of, talks through it, right? But you never know.
You certainly, though, can't talk your way into compliance. You're going to have to produce some sort of evidence, per these evidence types to get a comply. So essentially, you're not going to be able to just talk your way into compliance. There's going to be evidence that you're going to have to produce, probably 99% of the time, if you want to be able to get the check mark that you've met compliance.
That is the standard. That's what assessors are taught, and as you can see, the assessors are given something that says, for this assessment objective, we need you to have this. For this assessment objective, we need you to have this. And so if I've seen this several times in assessments, especially with the DIACC teams doing assessments on behalf of the military. If you try and say, let me just tell you how it's done, or let me send you a screenshot, and what this actually asks for is a live screen share, they will insist upon that screen share and say, look, my instructions tell me I need this. I'm going to keep asking for it.
Well, and it could be a big difference. I mean, a screenshot is a second in time.
Right.
A screen share is you actually walking them through it real time, where they can see that it's doing what you say it's doing.
Right. One can be altered. One can be different. It could have been recorded 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Whereas the screen share is generally a live, inspection of the system rather than an old report.
Yeah.
Now, let's see. In case I haven't beat it into everyone's heads, the evidence is on a per assessment objective level, right? So don't expect to gather 110 pieces of evidence. Expect to gather 320, right? That's how many assessment objectives are at level 2. And you might need more than one piece of evidence to show the full assessment objective, right? If you're talking about a multi-step process that, say, you use to onboard new users, you probably would want to show, the policy that describes it, the procedure that describes it, and then some records that show that you actually followed that process, right? 3 different pieces of evidence for one assessment objective. And then the precedent is also very strong for packaging it up. The company getting assessed, they're going to be asked to look at a list like this and make sure that they have provided evidence for each assessment objective for the relevant systems, which we'll get into in a different video, and get that all prepared 1 to 2 weeks before the assessment.
And now this applies, we're talking specifically here about an assessment being performed by the third-party assessor. What kind of advice can you give around your preparation for your self-assessment, and how some of this might apply there?
Yeah. So, a lot of companies, they misunderstand that they only really have to worry about that third-party assessor-led review. But actually, when you look at the requirements for CMMC level 2 and level 3, the company is supposed to be performing a high-quality self-assessment at least once a year, just like a third party would do. And so, anybody who complains and says, this assessment requirement, I have to get evidence once every 3 years, this is so hard. We've never done it before. We've never had to gather evidence before. Well, then that you're telling everybody that you haven't been compliant with 800-171, because compliance with that says you need to do a real self-assessment every single year, going back 7-8 years in the past. So you do, if you want to do well with the C3PO assessment, right, and if you want to be compliant and show that you're doing your contract the way you said that you were, you do want to have somebody who is competent, right? A senior cybersecurity person with some experience doing assessments, or they've received training in performing assessments for CMMC. Or, you bring in a third party who can help you maybe the first time and take good notes, and then you learn how to do it yourself. But you want to make sure that the person doing your assessment, you got at least one very knowledgeable person that can hold that standard of, I need to see a document, I need to see a screen share, I need to see an artifact. I can't just go, yeah, we're doing it. And that will give you an accurate self-assessment and make sure that you are doing the right thing if the DoD checks on you.
Great, thank you.
All right, on to the next topic.
That's what we've got on this. So yes, shameless plug, please click the like and subscribe. We're trying to produce regular content specifically to assist you all in your preparation for your assessment. Your success is our success, is our country's success at protecting this data. So like, subscribe. You can see more of Amira that way. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.